Welcome everyone. This session, Data Analytics in Business and Finance Tech Talk today, is part of Northeastern University's Career Prep Fest, which is a 2-week series of workshops, panels, and guest speakers designed to help you shine in your career search. Thank you everyone for participating. Now to some expectations and logistics for today's session. This is going to be a conversation session designed for engagement, and overall it is a safe space where no one is discouraged from contributing so long as they respect others' ability to contribute. Please remember that this is also a harassment-free experience for everyone, and regardless of gender or identity, your sexual orientation, disability, and physical appearance, religion, citizenship, and visa status. Important to note as well is that we proudly stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, with Black and brown faculty, staff, and students, and with all that we have experienced racism, discrimination, and other forms of injustice. During this Tech Talk, we value connections, so we highly encourage you to turn on your video, be present, and engage with us face-to-face today. This session is also going to be recorded, so participants are encouraged to take notes and utilize the chat throughout the session. The chat is going to be moderated by Caroline Mirza, who is a programming assistant and a project management student at Northeastern University, Seattle campus. Caroline, thank you for helping me moderate today's event. Participants, please comment, ask questions, and share resources and links as appropriate. Now let's get started with the Tech Talk today. So I would like to introduce today's panelists in our Data Analytics in Business and Finance session. We have the Head of User Insights and Analytics from Google, Fidel Rodriguez, as one of the panelists. So Fidel, thank you for joining us, and it will be definitely an honor today to hear your industry knowledge in the field of data analytics. Fidel, over to you.
Oh, sure. Do we want to pull up the slide that we have prepared, or just like just a quick introduction?
So I will do that with you.
Cool. Yeah, it's not that exciting. It's just like a quick bio. So I've been with Google for what, like 3.5 years. I originally started off in cloud, and that's funny. My updates didn't make it in here, but just like one quick change is I did start off as the head of analytics for Google Cloud's hardware operations group, where I did some really cool things across the United States and globally, and did a number of analyses there, primarily aimed at departmental performance and overall velocity of the Google Cloud organization. Last December, I moved over into Google Ads sales department, where I'm the head of user insights and analytics, and I lead a mixed bag of data scientists and other types of analytical people. I lecture part-time at Northeastern University because it's fun. And in my past, I kind of have a little bit of a blend of consulting. I was an executive at Accenture, and also very early in my career worked at Siemens. So I wasn't an executive then. I was more of like a doer, right? And before that, or in addition to that, I've also worked at Google, obviously, Live Nation and Guitar Center, and HP, which isn't listed there, but that's okay. And I studied finance in undergrad, and also studied analytics in grad school at Carnegie Mellon, and did a little bit of financial engineering at the Stevens Institute of Technology. And yeah, I'm from LA. I like financial research, hiking, and riding motorcycles.
So I have also taken 3 analytics classes under Fidel, and in another class, I was also the teaching assistant under him. And I have to say he is one of the best professors and a star performer at Northeastern Silicon Valley campus. Fidel is also an asset to our university, and it is always an honor to be your student, Fidel.
Thank you, Saniya.
So the second panelist for today is a proud Northeastern CPS alumni from Seattle, Trupti Shah. Hi, Trupti. So I will just provide a brief introduction about you. Trupti worked with us at Northeastern Seattle as a strategy and analytics associate, and she is going to join full-time with Costco as a data analyst.
Thank you, Saniya. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me for this panel. I'm really honored to be here. And yeah, quickly walking through and telling a bit more about myself. I graduated with my master's in data analytics from Northeastern University, Seattle in June 2019. And I have done my undergrad in computer engineering from Mumbai University. I'm originally from Mumbai, India. And after doing my undergrad, I worked for multiple organizations, but few to highlight here. I recently interned at Costco as in their advanced analytics team, and I'm currently transitioning to a full-time role there. And I've also had an opportunity to work at Northeastern University, as Saniya mentioned before. And before I joined Northeastern University, I was also working as business data analyst. So in just for all the organization, it has always been, coming up with insights and recommendations for the business to be able to make them, strategic decisions. And and my personal, I love to dance and travel. I'm a Zumba enthusiast, and yep, that's all about myself. Thank you, Saniya.
That's great to hear, Trupti, and congratulations on the new role. And we are all looking forward to hear your perspective as an analytics student and also your insights on data and business analytics today. So moving with that, I would give a short introduction to myself. I'm pursuing my MS in data analytics at Northeastern University, Silicon Valley campus. I earned my MBA in business analytics and finance and my bachelor's in statistics from India. This summer, I completed my data science internship with Skygeny, and I will be starting my analytics internship with SAP. I'm also pioneering as in the role of programming assistant at Northeastern University Silicon Valley campus, and I'm utilizing digital analytics to publish newsletters. I'm also working on extracting student experiences from different surveys, and I'm also leading new programs for the data analytics and project management students, and also the other graduates at Northeastern to make their journey at Northeastern a memorable one. So I have almost 3 years of industry experience and have worked as a data analyst at ICICI Bank and interned with General Insurance Corporation. So in my free time, I like to visit museums, I like watching movies, and I also enjoy photography, and I'm also learning scuba right now. So that is it for me right now. And we'll move to our talk on data analytics and learn more about it. So how data it is today, it is said to be the new oil in the tech world. And it is definitely one of the fastest growing and most in demand disciplines in technology today. It is also helping companies of all sizes and to predict how industry is trending in launching their new market products, and also how they need to react to the different consumer needs. With that need, we also have annual demand for the fast growing roles of data scientists, data developers, and data engineers. And it is claimed by the US Bureau of Labor Statistics that around 11.5 million of data jobs will be created by 2026. With that being said, let us dive into the roles and skills that are required for a data analyst. So how we understand the role of a data analyst is one who interprets data and it manipulates it into information which can offer ways to improve a business decision. They have been in the industry for a very long time, but we see that there has been a sudden change in 2020, and the demand for this particular role has been, making headlines. So something related to data analyst is another role, which is research scientist. And this role has also been gaining popularity, but it is more focused towards how we have research scientists. It is that they are pursuing their scientific passion in data, and they deal with both research and development of the data, and also they publish their studies in academic journals and publications. So when we combine the role of these two positions, the role of a data analyst and a research scientist, we have the role of a data scientist. So how we understand the data scientists are more, subject matter or analytical experts who utilize their skills in both technology and statistical and social sciences to find the trends in data and how they need to manage it. They are also using the industry knowledge that they have to uncover different solutions to different business challenges. So when we understand all the three roles that have evolved from a field that is focused on cleaning data sets and applying statistical methods into one that encompasses predictive analytics, data mining, business intelligence, machine learning, and there's a lot more to it. So when we talk of, when we talk what are the primary skills that are, important to data manipulation, then the first three that I get reminded of are Python, R, SQL. And the next step after data manipulation is how do we analyze and compile the data? So how do analysts they share their findings with the company, and it has to be not everybody in the company or the stakeholders they are going to be more data proficient, or they understand the language of how we talk in data and the jargons. So it has to be very easy to understand data visualizations, for which we utilize Tableau, Microsoft Excel, and we have Power BI. So analysts, they also utilize tools like Hadoop and Scala when they're working with big data. So when we define big data, it's data that is too large or complex to be dealt with traditional data processing application softwares. So Fidel, coming to you, how do we categorize something as big data? Definitely, the size of big data is relative to each organization. Hundreds of terabytes of data, it's not something new right now, but for most companies, is there any limit or set definition at your organization, at Google, of big data, something that until it breaks 10 terabyte, it isn't big data?
Yeah, that's a good question. And like coming from cloud, where we harvest a lot of telemetry for the information that we have of the systems that we have in the fleet, I can't reveal exactly the size or count, but it's definitely in the hundreds of millions of records that we get. And that's because the telemetry that we require is so precise. So it's very granular, like by second, right? And as a result, like the manner in which one, you store this data, and two, you query it actually matters, because you obviously don't want to like hit any of the production tables too hard, right? So like understanding how to query this information and how to get the specific records that you want. And that's actually the biggest challenge that we have in that particular space, is just knowing how to interact with those large tables and pull out information at the right level of granularity that you desire. Oftentimes you don't need, unless you're diagnosing a specific hardware issue, information at like the second level or microsecond, I should say. So yeah, like knowing how to interact with those things and aggregate your way up is super important.
Okay, so that is really informative, and kind of, it is a new knowledge for me. So Trupti, I would like to hear from you. How do you define, multi-terabytes of data, and how is it done at Costco?
That's a great question. Thank you, Saniya. So how I define, like along with size, I feel that there are other ways to define big data, like in particular, big data trends are diverse, like in terms of volume, as Fidel mentioned. Like data contains structure, like data consists of structured data as well as unstructured data, like and they are derived from various sources like audio, video. Again, the diversity of data types drives up to data volumes at times. And I also think of it as like velocity of speed of the data that it comes into the systems.
Yes.
Like say, for example, the frequency of data generation. You can think of like big data captured from like streaming services, like possibly we need to analyze and take action like all in real time. So yeah, I think big data is definitely a part of like a large data set, but also depends on how quickly are we supposed to analyze and take the necessary steps and with respect to different data types. So, and coming back to how it is different in Costco, like, I mean, yes, we do have structured as well as unstructured data. So it's like no different, but yeah, it's as I described in the answer.
That's really insightful to hear, Trupti, how it is done in Costco. So we can see both Google and in Costco, there is not much difference how they define, but it is based on the particular need of the project that they have, that they define in different ways. So when we talk of, the kind of analytics that is applied to big data, it is often termed as advanced analytics, and sometimes it is also termed as discovery analytics. And, that is what users, they are trying to, accomplish. They need to discover new trends in the data that they have. And against when we see discovery analytics and big data analytics, it can both be enabled by different types of analytical tools that we have. It can be done through SQL queries or through data mining, statistical analysis, also through NLP it can be done. So Fidel, coming to you, what are the technical skills that you believe are necessary in this field, based on that, you've been in this industry for more than 15 years and you have a lot of professional experience dealing with data and analytics?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think, like, kind of taking a little bit of a step back, I see the solutions that different types of analytical professionals provide as following like a bit of an evolutional continuum, right? So for example, in some cases, basic querying and basic analysis inside of like Google Sheets or Excel, if you use Microsoft tools, right, is sufficient to just give like some kind of pointed analysis. In other cases, you have to evolve that up into a self-service, so like something that's going to be longer term, in which case you use a dashboard technology. At Google, we have some proprietary internal stuff, some of which is a little bit public, like Data Studio is an example. We have something like that internal that's a little bit different that we use. And then if it still requires like a predictive lens or something along those lines, then we'll evolve to using like either Colab, depending on whether we want to operationalize this or not, or deploying whatever predictive models that we develop. Like for me and my team, primarily we have expertise inside of Python, so most of the stuff that we develop is in that type of environment. And then, like personally, the way I like to develop is I will work inside a Colab, and so too will most of my team, which is a public tool. It's research.google.com/Colab. Super cool. It's like Azure Notebooks from Microsoft, or Jupyter Notebook, but it's like that, but in the cloud and kind of on steroids as a result. And then if we want to operationalize something, then we deploy that piece of code into this kind of like ecosystem that we have, where we'll have like what are called SREs and other types of ML engineers monitoring it on a longer term basis. And then it just continues to run and refresh itself or retrain itself as needed. So like not every solution gets to that end state, like that fully mature, like always on operational. It's somewhere along that gradient between like basic analysis here in Sheets to dashboards to something predictive to like full operational deployment. And all of the skills that are necessary there could be anything from like SQL, mathematics, business statistics, domain expertise, a knowledge of advanced analytics, model tuning, model selection, and also diagnosing and troubleshooting when things go south. Yeah, so it's like, it depends where you're going to be in that continuum, that which skills will be emphasized. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Hopefully
definitely.
that answers the question. Yeah. Sorry, it was kind of long.
So, I would also like to ask the participants if they have any question related to what Fidel or Trupti they are working on. You are free to post your questions, and we will be answering them in today's session. So definitely when you explain to me, Fidel, right now, I believe there are a lot of different tools that we use, and savvy data analysts, they get to know what is the analytical requirement of that data set, just before dealing with the data itself. They know which tool is appropriate for this kind of analysis, what is the particular need of that data set. And when we also talk of big data, is there a problem to how we manage it, considering its size and diversity and speed? Do you think, is it an opportunity or a challenge? Because according to many internet surveys that we have done on big data analytics, around 70% of the users who responded to the survey, they felt that big data is definitely an opportunity for further analysis, but 30% of the users, they feel that the technical challenges of collecting and managing big data, there is a lot of issues in that. So how do you work with the challenges that come along your way when you're dealing with big data at Google?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So like Trupti actually reminded me of something that I forgot to mention. So she's inspiring this answer, which is there are a couple of, if you will, documents. So she had mentioned that sometimes big data can be characterized by the type of data that you're storing in a particular column. And some of the information that we have is stored as a document. And the reason it's stored that way is because it doesn't lend itself to the relational model. It's something that's best stored as a document. Learning how to navigate, it's as you would with like an XML doc or a JSON doc. We have something like that that has a different name internally. First, learning how to interact with that it's not as straightforward as you would imagine. The cool thing is that we've figured out a way to abstract it so that you can still interact with it with just basic, advanced SQL, different types of SQL that you can use to unpackage these documents and then relate them back to otherwise relational data. But most people don't know that coming in, so there's a little bit of a learning curve to get your arms around that. And then secondarily, what I've observed is that sometimes people will not work with that particular type of data because it's unwieldy. It's kind of like weird to join it up and get insights from it. And so that's a little bit of a barrier to entry, which is why I can see why folks will characterize this as both an opportunity and a bit of a challenge, because it is an opportunity that the information is gathered, but it's not acted upon oftentimes because people don't, and I'm not saying this like is a reflection of my staff, it's just been my observation that people often won't go and grab that information and figure out like what insights they can pull from it. So it requires a slightly different, it requires a little bit of like a retraining or understanding of how to interact with the data. And two, like sometimes I've seen this quite a bit in all over the place, especially when I was at Accenture, that people will gather data with no end in sight. Like there's no point behind the data. They're just kind of, something is instrumented, some sensor is instrumented, and as a result, it's writing information to some event logger. And in cases like that, if it's not being actioned upon, I would actually encourage businesses to either reevaluate whether that makes sense or to maybe stop logging because it does come at a cost. Like storage is not free, right? And that's the reason. Like there are some other challenges here, but I'm not exposed to them. For example, like when I worked at Live Nation, for example, the types of data structures or databases that we used back there were very much bound to an individual system. So once you exceeded a certain capacity and you ran out, you'd have to talk to a data engineer. And at the time I managed the data engineering team. So I got a lot of calls about storage and performance issues. And those are the types of issues that will arise, which is why I usually push back and say, stop capturing all the data, because I know how much it costs because I used to sign off on the POs. So does that answer your question? Kind of? I feel like I kind of rambled.
Yes, it does answer my question. So I have one more question for you. As you mentioned your experience at Google and Live Nation, how you deal with big data. I also understand with your experience that you also have a bit of financial experience, financial domain experience that you have worked in. So can you give us an insight of that too?
Yeah, for sure. So like I studied finance in undergrad. I love finance as a hobby. I built actual models that I've made business decisions off of to acquire certain pieces of real estate. And then using analytics, and it's actually kind of simple. It's like ridge and lasso regression for like variable selection or penalization to figure out like, one, how much is this property worth? Two, what can I expect to get for it, like based on in terms of income or cash flow. And I think for the first time this past year, I made an investment decision purely based off of analytics. And it turned out to be quite rewarding. I don't know if I got lucky, like it's one data point, right? So yeah, I love finance. I've also built models to try to predict recessions. So far, they've kind of been inaccurate, I think, unless you think we're in a recession now, we'll see. And I also, when I was at Accenture, I consulted with a couple of capital markets companies, you know, the people that trade stock and stuff. Right. And there I helped a couple companies identify anomalies in streaming data that they were getting from data providers. So like in the world of finance, like most of these big traders, like a Goldman or a Cap Group, will usually acquire data from some master provider, like a Bloomberg, for example. Right. These guys are the masters of data. So many parts of data, right? So, but sometimes there are other companies that specialize in kind of, there's a word for this, I can't remember what it is, but it's like not typical data. For example, like, did you ever hear about that company that had a bunch of drones that would fly over like oil fields to see what their productivity was, and then they would use that information to drive investment decisions? I think it's called like unorthodox data or something like that. So I was working with a company that should remain anonymous, and they were getting 4x information. So like swap rates, right? Like this Brazilian unit of currency is worth this many GDPs or what have you, right? And they were getting anomalous data. But the thing is, it was a bit challenging because oftentimes developing countries have large fluctuations in their exchange rates. So I helped them develop an anomaly detector to ascertain whether is this information that you're getting anomalous because it's way out of like the range of values that you would expect? And it would also take other factors into consideration, like headline information from a like New York Times or something like that, to help classify whether the information was valid or not. And this ended up saving an undisclosed amount of money because people were actually making bad decisions off of this otherwise anomalous data. So that's an example of my financial background.
Right. So when we talk of, stock markets and trading, it also has a lot of impact, how news channels or newspapers, how they publish the news about a particular company, and the stock markets are definitely, kind of like complement, or I would say they also have a correlation. So how do we analyze those kind of natural language processing rate, those kind of data? Is there any particular challenges with those kind of data?
Every model that I've built that exclusively predicts the stock market off of NLP has lost money. And so I've never productionized it as a result. So I don't have expertise in this area, but I know how to lose money. So I can help out with that. And the only time I was successful in this was building like a trigram-based model off of New York Times, and but it was only successful for binary outcomes, like whether the market would be up or down. And as you know, like that's not enough, because the direction that the magnitude of an up or down day is actually what determines whether you'll be profitable or not. So as a result, I haven't deciphered that one yet. If I have, like, I would just be giving millions to everybody, to be honest.
And true, I understand that. And I feel, the more information that we have, the more data that we have for analysis, organizations and companies, they can discover new facts about their, what current products that they have, about their new customer database, the market partners that they have regarding the cost pricing of the product. And all that information is very much useful for the business advantage for companies. So, thank you so much, Fidel, for those insights. Trupti, coming on to you.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
Is that okay? My latest incarnation of the bear market predictor takes into consideration like some stuff that Dr. Schiller has provided, as well as other economic signals like the 10-year yield curve, things like this. So it's still not clear enough because the granularity of that information is like quarterly, but it's if we do this again, I'll give you an update like in, I don't know, 6 months or something.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
So, right. So definitely how we see when you say about price predictions in the market. So that is also a lot of, we have different microeconomic variables that I would say that influence those kind of price too. Right. So Trupti, would you like to provide or share your experience regarding this, reflecting on your work experience?
Sure, definitely. Like, to be very honest, I am like still new to the analytics domain. I do not have as much experience as Fidel has in a way. Fidel, you're amazing. And so starting with, what experiences I have had so far, the projects I have worked on. So talking a bit more about my experience as a strategic data analyst associate at Northeastern. My projects moreover revolved around, designing and executing, comprehensive surveys in Qualtrics to understand like student experiences, moreover to, for the leadership in the Seattle to help them, understand what things that we are doing are great so that we can continue doing that. At the same time, where are the improvements required, like specifically with respect to, student experiences, with respect to teaching, like professional experiences with respect to different cultural activities happening on campus. So it's like slicing and dicing with respect to all the factors, which affect like now things have moved to online, but earlier everything was on campus. And moreover, relating to that experience, it was more about, how we can optimizely use, analyzing to have optimized utilization of the classrooms, predicting classroom utilization, like say, for example, these many students are supposed to be coming in, are expected to be coming in this fall, say, for example. So how do we see that coming in, like in the next year and next 2 years? Do we require more space? That kind of stuff. So that was major projects that I worked related to analytics. And other was coming back to my, internship experience at Costco, one of the interesting projects that I worked was your member churn analysis, analyzing the shopping behavior of the members who have, left and who didn't return back for their membership, and how can we understand the patterns, the existing patterns of the members who are churn, and how can we learn from that and predict the members who are about to churn. In that way, we are strategically targeting members for offering them more incentives, or depending on what marketing people decide to take an action, and then at the same time reducing the churn. So that are the major projects that I just wanted to share with you all.
That's really interesting to hear, Trupti. And adding on to that is, I'm also Costco. I have a Costco membership, and starting of the summer, there was an onion salmonella outbreak happening in the Bay Area, and what I realized was Costco was also not just sending it to the customers who had bought onion packets and everything. They also did more kind of analytics. I read it on the internet that whoever bought something, whichever was related to something with, onion seasoning or something salads which had onions in it. So they did a lot of analysis on it, and they stopped the sale of onion. They, sent emails to the customers. They also send a letter to the customers. So I feel that is how they are utilizing data even for the customer satisfaction for their business, and also to make data-driven business decisions at Costco.
Definitely.
So we have many students from business and marketing also joining us today. And one question that we have right now is, how does a student who is not from a technical background, how do they start their career path if it is in data analytics? So is it necessary to go back to college, get their degree in analytics and then start, or they can take a shortcut or through boot camps or certifications? So I would like to hear both Fidel and Trupti, your views on it. How do you see that one can start in a career in analytics, and what is the career transition for that?
You want to go first, Trupti? No? Okay. Let's see. How do you? I would like to see the question. Let me see if I can pull down like the chat or what have you. Or can you read the question?
So yeah, right. So it is like one student has asked that I'm from a management degree and I want to make a career transition. So please tell me that how do I earn my degree in analytics? Is it through going back to school or through certifications? Which would be the best learning experience for me?
That's a good question. So I guess it depends the degree to which the person is not technical, right? So like can the person spell SQL, for example, like that, not technical, or like, are they comfortable with SQL but don't have formal training? So like first a simple assessment of where they are. And probably my recommendation would be, there's a group, what are these guys called? It's called something, I'll find the name of the group and I'll ping it into the chat. But there's a group out there, there are many groups, Gartner's another one, that publishes like, here's a typical profile of an analytical professional and the skills that person possesses. And somewhere up here, I have a slide of the things that I kind of look for in candidates. So I would probably—
Harnum? Sorry to interrupt, it is Harnum? Harnum?
It's not Harnum Group.
Okay.
Those people publish stuff too. It's, I'll get back to you on this one, yeah?
Okay. Yeah, you can continue. Sorry to interrupt.
I used them when I was at Accenture, TDWI, the Data Warehouse Institute. So every year they publish something called the salary report or the job profile report. And in there, they'll have like little distributions of salaries, such as the ones that you had from Glassdoor, along with all of the skills and where the demand is and the languages that are most commonly used, blah, 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 right? So I'd probably reference one of those things to understand, like, what are the people that are out there doing? What do I have and what don't I have? And do it like an internal gap analysis to figure out where to improve. And then the second thing is like, I can only say selfishly, what I look for is like problem solving ability and teamwork, right? Like those are kind of easy skills. You don't have to get a degree necessarily to have those, right? And, but the business context actually matters. So for example, when I was in cloud, there was a lot of focus on hardware engineers. So oftentimes I would find myself facing off with PhDs that studied something like super specific, like memory architectures or processor design or BIOS construction. So like being able to understand a little bit of the business context, kind of like in my current role, the role is about ad sales. So I had to learn a bunch of things, and I'm still not done yet. It's going to take a while to learn about the domain, to understand like what is seller behavior, what are the outcomes that they're optimizing for, and how can analytics inform what they should and shouldn't be doing. So I think check what hard skills are missing. I think HackerRank and LeetCode are good tools. I think Udemy, Coursera is also not bad. I personally, so these are my views, not those of Google. I like education, hence why I teach, right? And I think it's a super rewarding experience. I would encourage anybody to go out and get a degree, because for me, the most valuable thing is not necessarily the degree itself or the core classes that I took, but it's all those other classes that I was forced to take that I got a lot of value out of, like art history and physics and accounting. Like all those things kind of matter, and they shape your worldview as you come in, and you can be a much stronger analyst. So I think if you're looking for very pointed things, like I already have my degree in my background, but I have a couple gaps, probably Udemy or Coursera to fill those gaps, or just research. And then, but if you have many gaps and you're missing like a foundational knowledge, perhaps a degree might be able to like cover more breadth. That's kind of my thinking. And if they like, I mean, I'm always open to doing like an impromptu interview and evaluating somebody's skill set. I ask hard questions though.
So that's a great opportunity for the participants that we have right now with us. And, you know, Fidel is really good with, if you want to do any mock interviews, you can definitely schedule an interview with him. And I will be also posting Fidel's Northeastern email that you can directly reach out to him for that. So Fidel, one more question I had was when you mentioned the two soft skills, one is, teamwork, and the other one is problem solving skills. Apart from that, what are the necessary skills for a person? Because definitely when we are talking of analysis, it's a lot of, the person should be a lot of inquisitive, curious, and it is a lot of critical thinking involved when you do study a data set. So what is your take with the soft skills?
Yeah, I think definitely problem solving, intellectual curiosity, as you said, is super important. And I think what I found in the years that I've been working, the better analysts, my observation only, right, are those that when they're poking around the data and they find some kind of a trend or correlative behavior, they will go and ask people like, why is this? What's your take on this? And oftentimes, if you interview 5 different users and ask for their perspective, you may end up with 5 distinct answers. And then it's your job to kind of synthesize these different perspectives and see where they align and in areas why they don't align. And then having that like intellectual curiosity to press on your questions is important. And also having the people skills to ask people. I don't have the best people skills, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And this is being recorded, right? That's good. So yeah, I'll say it officially.
For your people skills that.
Oh, thank you.
Of all the students, in many of the students who joined Fidel's first class, they continue to take only his class for the next 3 quarters, and most of his classes we had a long waiting queues. Students used to wait. When the window was used to open for registration, we used to all register for him. So many students were also in the waiting list. So definitely, I would say that I disagree with you.
Oh, thank you. I accept your disagreements. I welcome it. Yeah. So, but like having those soft skills to go and have how could I put it? How like you teed up the conversation, like a psychologically safe environment where any question is welcome, as long as, like be nice to others. Like setting up that kind of a background for the user interviews you're going to have is super beneficial. Like I'll give you a good case point. I was trying to establish data-driven user journeys for sellers, right? Like what are all the things they typically do? And in order to do that, you have an element of time and you see all the actions that somebody takes, and then you try to find common series of actions, and those turn into like workflows, right? From a super data-driven perspective. I found a couple of outliers there of people who looked like they were working for 11 hours straight, just hammering an application. At first, I thought it was a bot, right? Like there's no way a human could work for 11 hours just looking at a computer, like interacting and running all these forecasts. Right. So I figured it was a bot. Upon further analysis, it was a human. The manner in which you have that conversation, though, it has to be a super safe one. You can't go in and say like, I've been spying on your traffic and I noticed this. Why are you doing that? That's going to make people really uncomfortable. So instead you have to say like, hey, I'm so and so, I'm on this team, we specialize in this, I'm trying to understand that. Can you help walk me through like a day in your life? Like those types of people skills and charisma, very important. Those like on the softer side. Yeah.
Thank you, Fidel. And also, I would also like to learn more from you after I move on to Trupti that, what are the skills important if a person is looking to join Google as a data analyst? What are the great skills that they can kind of portray in during the interview and more on that. So I will ask this question to Trupti. What is your take on the skills and what are the technical competencies that a person need to have to excel in their career as a data analyst? And what is your take on if a person wants to make a career transition from management to analytics? What is the right career path or the track that they can take?
So answering your questions regarding the skills, I think you pretty much covered all the important tools and technologies right now that are being, widely used in the field of like data analytics. So that being said, this is always that I have learned from, my professors and my mentors that technology is about to change, right? It will always change over the period of time. Today we are using this kind of tool, tomorrow we'll be using something else.
Right,
So
right.
as like Fidel rightly mentioned, like, you should be really curious to learn. One should always be, quick learner in a way. So I feel that is also a very important quality required when we are working in the tech industry, especially in the data analytics domain. And another thing that I would like to add here is like, that's the very most important learning for me was, when this is regarding a soft skill, like this is, it's moreover whenever we are about to solve a problem, always relate it to what business problem are you trying to solve. Is it really usable for the business? Will this make an impact? Because data is so huge at times, like while doing analysis we just tend to get lost somewhere. But at the end of the day, whatever analysis you do, will it be helpful for the business? Will it provide a different kind of insight for them to implement? So this is in relation to, technical. I think Fidel and you pretty much covered the rest of it. And coming to coming to your question regarding if someone is from non-tech background or they're transitioning, I would say like having the fundamentals correct is very important, irrespective you take a long, shortcuts. I'm not a big fan of shortcuts though, but it's everything is situational based. But I would say having your fundamental rights is really very important. So yeah, did that answer your question?
Definitely. And I also would like to say that, even if you are in a different program which is not related to analytics, there is a lot of open source information that we have, and you can definitely learn through, if it is lead code or HackerRank, you can also go through a lot of projects that we have already on GitHub and HackerRank and Kaggle. So that is also a really great opportunity because information regarding, the main programming languages, if you want to learn those, starting with Python and SQL, that you can take tutorials, which we have available on Coursera. We also have a few available on Udemy. And that is one of the parts that they can start taking or, practicing their programming skills and see which direction. Because, the path of analytics, it is not a straight path. There are different, I would say, branches or distributaries in it. It is, data science, it is advanced analytics, it is research analytics. So it is very much necessary that, what your interest lies in. And that is the first step. The second step is which industry your interest or passion lies in, whether you want to go into a finance domain analytics, or it is a people analytics, or it is more related towards engineering. So that is all very much important for students at this stage is start working on the skills that the basic skills, and see where your passion is leading to, to which path, I would say. And Fidel, I would also like to understand from you is what are the trends that you have noticed in the role of analytics, and what are your tips or you strategies you would say for a person to excel in their analytics interviews?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe one trend that I've noticed over the past 10 years is, this isn't always the case, but business users are becoming a little more technical in nature. And it's very common to be able to share like SQL and maybe to some degree some Python with a business user and have him or her make heads or tails of it. So the business user is a little more sophisticated, and as a result can shape their questions a little bit better. So that's one thing I've noticed that's pretty cool. Another thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if this is just my own like style, but my personal expectation of most analysts is that they can run things end to end. That's kind of what I like. So like on my team, I have 3 primary capabilities that I optimize for. One is strategy, the other is advanced analytics, and the other is data engineering. My hope when I interview candidates is they have spikes in 2 out of 3 of those things. 3 out of 3 is fantastic, but it's rare. And I like it when like all those capabilities have at least a baseline level of understanding, because what that means is anybody that I roll onto my team can pick up a ball mid-project and run with it. So like they could find themselves writing queries, working in Python, building models, putting the results into a slide deck to go and influence or otherwise compel an executive audience, and understand what that trade-off is. Like, you have a good enough solution, the accuracy doesn't have to be improved, I can walk away from the table. So like, that's one thing I've noticed, is that like I'm increasingly demanding, and so too are other people that are hiring managers for these types of roles, is that the expectation is a little bit broader. Now that does vary though. Like there are a couple of flavors of analysts, right? So for example, at Google, there is something called a product analyst, formerly called business analyst. There is something called, there's not an actual data engineering title to my knowledge. They're typically SREs or SWEs. And then there's also like pure play strategists, right? And like analysts kind of have to, at least the ones that I like to hire are, well, I should say I like. The ones that I evaluate them along those skills to see if they will indeed be successful running a project end to end. So another comment I'll make is like, there's another type of job family called a QA researcher. And there are differences in terms of specialty. So an example is to be a QA researcher would do a long-term longitudinal study on some cohort within YouTube. Like this is the group of people that like, I don't know, Justin Bieber or what have you. And I'm going to study their behavior over many, many quarters. And then there's something else called a product analyst, right? Which is quite a bit more short term. Like, what do we need to do tactically over the next quarter, right? Or the next 2 quarters. And then somewhere in the middle is data science. So there's kind of like, in terms of like the horizon of time that is under study, it's product analysts on the shorter end, QAs on the longer end, quantitative analysts, and then right in the middle is data scientists. And they have slightly different specialties, and I'm sure this varies from company to company. But like, another thing I noticed is that as the industry is maturing, like for those job families, like the work is still a little bit narrower than what I outlined earlier. But the depth that you're expecting and the breadth is increasing. I think that's also why like certain colleges have reacted in response by creating these majors to teach those skills.
Thank you so much, Fidel. Right. So I hope that is also helpful for the other participants that we have with us. So one student has a question for you, Fidel. They want to know any particular product that, or any particular project that you have worked with Google, and what was the driving data-driven decision that you helped the team implement with it? Do you want me
to repeat the
question?
No, that's a good question. I'm curious, how do you see these questions? I don't see them in the chat.
So they are being sent. Yeah, they are sending me privately.
Okay, I have maybe
participants also, if you would like to unmute yourself, you can also unmute yourselves and directly ask the panelists the questions.
Totally. So let's see, I have 4 cases that I can discuss, and I'll let the person who asked the question select one. One question or one case is about identifying bottlenecks in our supply chain. Another case is about applying Weibull analysis for understanding like how long a piece of hardware should live versus how long it actually lived. Another one is this idea of incrementality, and that is to say, if you do this one thing, how much more in sales can you unlock? And then the last thing is an economic engine that one of my teams developed that related amount of time to do some service with points, and then created this if you will, like leaderboard type of thing. So I can speak to any of those 4 or others if you give me time to just think. Are any of those 4 interesting to the candidate that asked the question?
So I believe that answers the question to the student that has asked. And one more question I have for both.
That's it? I can like explain more, like what the outcomes were and what the problem was.
We would love to hear more on that. Yeah.
Okay, which one? Between 1 and 4?
Uh, it can be,
Anyone?
anyone, the best that you think.
The best one? They're all the best. Let's see. So I kind of like the Weibull analysis, right? So like the way, if you think about like humans and hardware, we all have expected lives, right? Like it's a little bit dark, but sadly, if you look at like death rate over time, there's probably a little bump at the beginning, infant death, right? And then when you reach a mature age, like perhaps 20 or so, you'll have like this constant, what's called a
Stable
constant
kind of
death
say,
rate. Yeah, like you may die due to anomalies, but you will not die likely as a result of heart failure or what have you. Maybe you get shot or you car accident or something along these lines. It's terrible, right? But like barring anomalies, it's pretty consistent. And then as you get older, then it starts to spike again because our bodies wear out, right? Just like hardware, right? So then the problem was, is it possible to find any pieces of hardware that have like a certain expected life curve? And are they in fact dying earlier, which is often the case, versus lasting longer, right? And so what we did is we harvested all of the information, which because it was unstructured and weird, isn't exactly easy. Like there's no table, like I hate to break the news to everybody on the class, but all of the classes that at least the ones that I teach, I manually curate the data and I provide like clear examples where you can apply the things that we're learning. In the real world, however, you will have to curate yourself, which is why mastery of SQL is important. So in this case, you have to go and query an unstructured component because like, without getting into the details, the information that we were seeking was in a document. It's not actually in a row, like it's not a column that you can query out. You have to parse some particular document and get this information out. It's still in a table, but it's something that you have to parse. So you get all this information out, you figure out like, okay, this thing was made by that manufacturer. It was released on this year. So it's part of cohort A, for example, right? And you'll study what its lifetime is. And then lifetime is simple, right? Like how long, when was it deployed? How long was it until it got replaced due to a failure? Then you can say that's the lifetime. Then you can accrue failure rates and then do what's called a Weibull distribution fit to see what does that lifeline look like. And it's funny because that's actually a package. You can Google this. We use a package called Lifelines to simplify Weibull analyses at Google. And then you can very easily see like, here's what the expected lifeline was going to look like. Here's what the actual lifeline looked like. And if there's ever a delta there, you can give that feedback to the manufacturer and say like, hey, things are dying prematurely, or things are living longer than expected. Thank you so much for this great product. That's a pretty cool analysis, I thought. And the business decisions that it drove are, let me see which ones I can share. I'll just share very generically, like obviously with this information, you can do a lot of things. The most important thing that I can speak to is it provided visibility into how things that we were spending a lot of money on. And you can see like in our 10K and 10Q reports, like data centers and capital expenditures are quite high for Google. A portion of that, it goes towards the hardware fleet of which these components are a part. Yeah, right. So it's like, it's a cost driver.
Right, so adding more to your question, is it definitely, as you said for Google, it is more of it is going for hardware. Is there any other department where it is also the same at Google?
To understand hardware like at this level? Is that the question?
Yes, so you said that most of it is going to hardware. So is there any other department also at Google which is seeing the same trend?
I never said most of it. I was very careful not to say that. I said a portion of it.
Right.
Yeah, there are many places where we tuck money into, and a lot of that it's not revealed in our quarterly and annual reports, and as a result, I cannot divulge that information. But as you can imagine, Alphabet has a number of subsidiaries in which we invest, and then I think we do break out to some degree what our P&L looks like for our bets and our ads and YouTube, and that stuff is pretty clear. And yeah, I mean, like, I think that's the most I can say about that.
Thank you so much for the interesting, insights that you provided us, Fidel. So Trupti, I have one question for you. A student wants to know that what are the strategies they can start working on to prepare for full-time roles for summer?
Wow. Related to strategies, I would go to, first of all, look into what kind of role you really want to get into. Is it like Fidel mentioned, like a product, like similar to business analyst, data analyst, or data scientist, like a finance analyst. Under analyst, data analyst, there are different domains. You also have marketing analyst. So what really interests you? Go up on LinkedIn, go up on Glassdoor, and check what kind of roles really interest you, and what kind of tools and technologies are being used in that kind of, environment, work environment. So first of all, really researching on what are your interests. And second thing is, I would like to say, yeah, practice as much as you can on HackerRank and Lead Code. Like those tools are really, really important for cracking interviews. And yes, practice, practice, I would say. And I think Fidel mentioned that he's also open to interviews. So anyone can reach to him. I think he would be the best person.
So we ask the participants joining in, I will provide your email ID in the chat box. And if you have any queries regarding a mock interviews, you can directly reach Fidel for that. So one last question I have for this session is students want to know when they can start applying for internships and full-time roles at Google. So this is for you, Fidel.
This is a question I am not equipped to answer. I do not work on the team that hires interns. And so like, just some context, right? The way it works usually is as a hiring manager, I think in May or April, people ops, that's what we call HR, right? People ops will go to different hiring managers and they will offer candidates and they will share profiles. So like, I'm kind of disconnected from that process. I'm more of a consumer of that information, but I can find somebody on the internship team to see what their cadence is. I suspect I believe actually one thing I'll note is I think we primarily take on summer interns, I think. I'm not terribly sure of that. And I reckon that we probably evaluate candidates like December, January, February, something like that.
Thank you so much for the information, Fidel. And I have also posted his work email ID at Northeastern. You can directly contact him if you are looking for mock interviews. So Trupti, coming on to you, when is the correct time to apply for internships and full-time roles at Costco?
That's a great question. To be very honest, I'm like really new to the organization in a way, so I do not have like much info about it. But I'm sure I've heard that there are internships happening in winter as well as in next summer. So you can keep an eye out on the career portal and see, and if someone's interested, they can connect to me and then I can connect you with the HR and, introduce you, so that will be helpful in a way. But to be very honest, when exactly, that's a tough question.
So I would say to the participants, I have also been applying for internships and full-time roles. So I would say that companies, they post new roles, if it is Google, Microsoft, or Costco, or be it any organization, they keep updating their portals every day, and they have been posting new roles. So it is very important that you check the LinkedIn, job postings, and also their career portals, because that is where they primarily post for any opportunities that we have. So that is it for now. It is already, we are 1 minute over time, and it is incredible to have, Fidel and Trupti, both of you, to provide your insights on data analytics and how you are building products with at Google and Costco respectively with data-driven decisions. So thank you to the participants also for your participation and for providing your time today for this session. And thank you, the panelists, for providing their time today, their knowledge, expertise in data analytics domain. And I would also like to thank Caroline for being an awesome friend today and helping me moderate the chat section and providing the questions to me. So a big thank you to all the participants for joining us. And before you leave, we would also we have a survey that we have going on for this event. So just to remind you, the title of the event says Data Analytics in Business and Finance. And Caroline has posted the survey link, and I will post it once again in the chat section. So please fill the survey, and we also appreciate any feedbacks that you have for any future events, so that we are able to provide you the best experience. Also, please mark your calendars for the upcoming West Coast Connect event that we have on October 2, which is a new kind of virtual career fair. So all the networking and career discovery, it will happen without the long queues that we generally have to go through. So you just need to follow up with the employers, meet the West Coast Connect team, and practice your interviewing skills with mock interviews during the Reconnect event, which is happening on October 16th. Finally, also don't miss the excellent programming feature that we have for the Grad Career Summit, and that is also happening on October 16th, which will be a series of virtual career fairs throughout October, and that is going to be organized by Northeastern University. So keep an eye on for the newsletters that you keep receiving from the university. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. If you have any more questions, you can mail it to me. I will provide my email ID in the chat section. Thank you, everyone.